Look, you are not alone. We're seeing a massive movement of people that want to purchase raw land. They just want a little space, a little bit of land they can call their own where no one can tell them what they can and can't do. The issue with that is, if you don't know what to look for and the warning signs to avoid, something as simple as buying a piece of raw land can be an absolute disaster, and most importantly, cause you to go broke. Between deed restrictions, flood zones, Corps of Engineer restrictions, clouds on the title, and that's just a few of them. I'm going to share with you exactly what to avoid, how to avoid losing a whole lot of money, and what's going to help you and prevent you from having a whole lot of stress when it comes to just buying a piece of land. So listen, grab a pen and a piece of paper. You're going to want to write these down. Now, before we jump in, you may want to subscribe to the channel. There's no cost and no obligation to hit that subscribe button. Give me a little thumbs up, and you might want to click the bell. That gives you notifications when I produce and post new videos. My name is Wayne Turner. For nearly 30 years, I've done just about everything when it comes to buying, selling, flipping, real estate, you name it. I've helped thousands of people purchase real estate. I share that with you so you can have the confidence knowing that what you learn from me is from actual real life experience. And I promise you, you will learn something new in every single episode. Now, when you find that property that you think is the one, there are 6 things that you're going to want to do. And isn't it beautiful out here? You can see how people just want a little piece of land, their own little space, and their own little freedom. There's 6 things you're going to want to do. Number 1, and once again, write this down. You'll want to get a survey. Ask the owner of the property that you're buying it from, do they have a copy of the survey? And once you have that survey, you're going to want to walk the property. It's going to show you how many feet, where it begins, where it ends. It's going to show you road frontage, all of that. Now, if you want to walk the property and you're not sure of feet and measurements, you can purchase a little wheel. I'll put a link below. Those are the great little tools. They're very inexpensive. And when you walk it, it shows you the actual feet of what you're walking, so you can measure off really simple hundreds of feet of land. You can also purchase a metal detector. I'll put a link below to that as well. The metal detectors are great because when a property is surveyed, they drive steel rods into the ground. So once you have a copy of that survey from the owner, you can walk the property, find the pins, and then you can verify where it begins and where it ends. Now, number 2, you're going to want to know what's the flood zone of the property. It may not be in a flood zone at all, but you need to verify that and check with that, especially if it's in around any sort of a water, any creeks, rivers, streams, or anything like that. You can check with the flood zones. They're either going to be an A, B, C, or X. There's variations of A. But that will make a big deterrent on how much water is going to accumulate on that property, when it could accumulate on the property, and most importantly, how much insurance you're going to pay on the property. How you do that is most of the time it's on the survey if you can get a copy of the survey. If it's not on the survey, you can check the FEMA flood map by simply putting in the property address, the street, the area, and it will show you on a map on a computer what flood zone that property's in that you're looking to purchase. Now, number 3, you're going to want to get a copy of the deed restrictions. What good is the property if you can't do what you want to do with it? And those deed restrictions will tell you what you can and can't do, what you can put on the property, the farm animals you can put on the property. And listen, it may not be something that you want to use or a goal or any kind of dream that you have in mind, but you've got to consider resale. If you decide you want to sell that property and it's 5 acres and you want to upgrade to 15 or 20 acres, but they can't have any farm animals on it, you're okay with that, but the next buyer may not be. So just take all of that into consideration. Those deed restrictions are also going to tell you how big of home you can and cannot build. Now, number 4 is water and mineral rights. You want to make sure that you have the water rights and the mineral rights. See, a lot of people don't realize that, but you got to buy a piece of property. You need to know that up front before you spend any kind of money in your time, because the owner of the property may say, well, they're selling it to you and everything's fine and good, but if they don't relinquish and let the mineral rights go to you. So for example, lithium, heard that word, right? What about crude oil? Heard that word, right? What about water? The last thing you want to do is to own and purchase a piece of land and all of a sudden get a certified letter in the mail that they're going to start drilling on your property because you didn't purchase the mineral rights when you bought it. And number 5, and listen, this stuff is really inexpensive and most of it is free. You just have to know what to ask. You got to ask the seller, are there any encroachments on the property? Is there anything that's encroached upon the property that the neighbor owns that you need to be aware of? The last thing you want to do is purchase a piece of property and to find out somebody is encroaching with a fence or building or storage building or dog pen or whatever it may be. You just need to know that stuff now as opposed to later when buying a piece of land. Now, number 6 is easements and servitudes. You need to ask the property owner, are there any easements or servitudes on the property? An easement basically gives somebody the right of way to enter and cross upon the property that you're about to purchase. A servitude is something that you don't have much control over. Like they'll have utility lines and servitudes like that where you can't put a main structure on that property. So you just have to know that, because if you got a servitude running through the middle of the property that you're looking at putting your home, that won't work for you. Now, I told you that there were 6, but right here on Lake Pontchartrain, I thought, why not do one more, and 7, and that is anytime you're buying land around water, close to water, touching a big body of water, whether it be a river, a lake, the Tennessee Valley Authority, you got dams everywhere, you got to know that the Corps of Engineers is the final judgment maker and the say-so on that property. So you got to make sure if you're going to buy a piece of property and it's on a water and you're thinking you're going to put a boat dock on there, you need to check with the Corps of Engineers to see if you can even get a permit when it comes to any of that. That water is controlled by the government. Now here's the tricky part, and this is where so many people make the mistake. They go off of all of this. They've looked at the deed restrictions and the servitudes and all that. But what they fail to do is check with the county, the parish, the city to find out what they can and can't allow to be done on the property. You may thinking you're going to clear out a bunch of trees, but the county or the parish won't allow it. You're thinking that you're going to bring in some fill dirt, but the Corps of Engineers won't allow it. So it's not enough just to check with the owner of the property and deed restrictions and covenants and all of that stuff. You need to check with the city and the county and the local governments to know that what you want to do with the property, you can actually do on that property. Yep, I get it. I know what you're thinking. That's my land. I can do what the hell I want to. Unfortunately, there's county and city and parishes that have jurisdiction, states, Corps of Engineers that have jurisdiction. Like, for example, if you buy a piece of land and you're thinking, well, look, we're going to buy a piece of land. It's 20 acres. We're going to cut it up into 4 tracts, and that way we can sell it off. But here's what you have to understand. The city or the county or the parish, they may not allow you to do that. I've seen that happen where you purchase a piece of land and you don't check with the local governments, where you have to pretty much petition, if you will, to the city council or the county council to actually do what you want to do, because they have restrictions in place that won't let you subdivide certain parcels of land into a certain size of land to sell off into the future. You just need to know that now as opposed to after you purchase that land. Now, if that land is on a waterway, you need to check and double check with the city and the county and also the Corps of Engineers to make sure you can actually bring in dirt, fill dirt, if you will. A lot of people buy a piece of land, it's on a flat area, it's real low, it's close to the water. They're thinking they're going to bring in 60, 80, 100 yards of dirt, build it up a little bit. The Corps of Engineers won't let you do that. You have to be careful on that. I've seen it happen where people were fined heavily for bringing in dirt. They will fine you and make you remove all of that dirt. So you just need to know this stuff up front. That's why I produce these videos. And if you're liking them, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment if any of this stuff has ever happened to you, because your comments actually help me and help other people so we don't all make the same mistakes. Now, when you're buying that land and you're thinking about building into the future, it's important to check and find out what utilities are on the property. Is there electric close by? Is there water? Is there sewer? Or do you have to put in a septic system? Do you have to drill for a well? You also need to look around and think, okay, well, if I got to drill for a well and I got a septic system, I got to make sure that land is going to perk. And if I'm going to drill a well, I need to know how much rock is in that land. So you look around for things like cedar trees. When you see lots of cedar trees growing everywhere, that's a good sign that there's a lot of rock in that land. So you just need to know those little subtle things up front, because it's going to cost you a whole lot more to dig a 400-foot well, if you will, in rock as opposed to in dirt. Now, I mentioned a septic system. Let's go over here a little bit. I got to get out of the sun. I mentioned a septic system. If there's no sewer on the property, you got to put a septic system on the property. If you put a septic system on the property, the county, the parish has to come out and make sure that land's going to perk, because when you put certain septic systems on properties, that sewer system, septic system, if you will, has to absorb into the ground. So they have to make sure there's a percolation test. What happens though is some land won't perk because it has so much rock or clay into the soil. So you can ask the seller to do that, or that's something that you can do before you close on it. It may be a little bit of an investment to actually have it tested and to see if it will perk, but it's good to know that before you buy the land instead of after you buy the land. Now, don't get me wrong, there's ways around it if it won't perk. There's other systems and things like that you can do, but they're just going to be greatly more expensive than if you just put in a traditional septic system that could cost you $4,000. You also want to make sure this, now write this down, If you go to the city or go to the county, you need to tell them how many bedrooms of the house you're going to build. If you tell them 3 bedrooms and you build a 4-bedroom house, that's where you're going to run into a lot of headache. If you ever go to sell that house in the future and you have it as a 4-bedroom, but they have you perking as a 3-bedroom, the buyer's going to be like, oh, wait a minute, it's a 4-bedroom house, but they will only let it perk for a 3-bedroom. I know it sounds crazy. They don't go off bathrooms. You can have 6 damn bathrooms in a house, but if you only have 3 bedrooms, then they perk it for a 3-bedroom. Moral of the story is this: whether you're going to put 3 bedrooms or 4 bedrooms or 5 bedrooms, go with the higher number. If you're going to do 4, go with 5. If you're going to do 3, go with 4. Tell them you're going to perk it for a higher number. That way you know. And they'll tell you, hey, it won't perk for a 4, but it perk for a 3. It won't perk for a 5, but it will perk for a 4. Now look, I've been talking about everything you need to do to prepare to buy the land before you close on the land, but before you do anything, you need to talk with a credit union or a local bank to see if they'll actually loan you the money, to see if they will approve you. You don't necessarily have to have a piece of land. That's a misconception. You don't need to have a piece of land, found a piece of land, then go to them and say, I want to buy a piece of land that's this much money. No, you go to them and say, hey, I want to spend $700 a month or $800 a month or whatever it may be that you're comfortable with, and they will approve you. That way, when you're approved, they're going to hand you a certificate of an approval, and you can have that. It's like cash when you present that to the seller. So they're going to be much more understanding with you when you start asking for this stuff. When you say, hey, I'm putting 10% down, I'm approved with my credit union, I'm good to go, I'm golden. Now here's one thing that you can't make this mistake. People purchase land with cash. When you purchase land with cash, people don't get title policies. When you purchase a piece of land, house structure, anything, and you get a loan, the lender is going to require you get a title policy on the property. And listen, a title policy is different from like an automobile loan policy. A title policy covers you from the day you purchase the property all the way back. So no one's going to come knocking on your door and say, hey, I put a well, I put a septic, you owe me money on the property. No, the attorneys do title search, they do a title policy, they give you a clear title on the property to make sure there's no back taxes, liens, encumbrances, or anything like that. So oftentimes people purchase land with cash and they don't get a title policy. You never want to do that. Every time you purchase anything, just make sure you get a title policy that will cover you now, in the rears, and into the future. Now, one of the biggest mistakes that people make, you found your land, you bought it, you got your loan, you did everything, you had your checklist, all the good stuff, right? The thing that people fail to do is they don't get a liability policy on that land. You want to make sure you have minimum, like a liability policy, and you also want to make sure you put up no trespassing signs, because here's what's going to happen. Somebody's going to get on that land, they're going to ride 4-wheelers, they're going to get hurt, and then mom and dad's going to sue you. So you need to make sure you have a liability policy. Listen, make you a list, check this stuff off, make sure that it checks all the boxes, that it's good for you, that land, you're going to be happy with it into the future. I thank you for watching. My name is Wayne Turner. Subscribe to the channel. Give me a thumbs up if you like these videos. And until next time, God bless.